Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video, and we're back again looking at axes this time. Back in my sort of review series of all the different weapons right now in the K patch. First we're going to get into Battle Axe. I'm going to go through all the abilities as I did before. We'll go over the passives this time. I actually forgot in the sword video, so I do apologise for that. But yeah, so Riven Strike deals 191 bleed damage to an enemy target and inflicts a 4-second bleed. The bleed deals 16 physical damage per second and reduces healing gain by 10%. 2-second cooldown, 10 energy cost. So the energy cost actually pretty high, especially since the cooldown is quite low. Fierce Strike, a strong blow which instantly deals 230 physical damage, lower energy cost and same cooldown. So Riven Strike is better. It's going to do more damage overall because you stack that 16 physical damage 3 times. It's already doing more damage than Fierce Strike. And the fact that you pair that up with, it works like Vile Curse with like how Grudge did. That it's going to keep reapplying that dot, so you actually get 4 ticks every now and again. That's actually going to tick really, really hard. So it does do a lot more damage, but the energy cost is going to really, really hurt. So I'd definitely say Riven Strike is better. But like I said, if you can't run Riven Strike for whatever reason, because you just don't have the energy sustainability, go for Fierce Strike. Deadly Chop, after a short preparation, releases a heavy attack dealing the target, damaging the target for 552. Sorry guys, I'm still super sick. And reducing the resistances by 47 for 8 seconds. Really, really high damage. And the fact that it reduces the resistances, this is probably the best W that axes have. Everybody uses it. It is so strong. And on the later weapons, things like the Carrying Crawler, the Scythe, and now even the Bear Paws, this is going to have a base damage of like 700 plus. It's going to do so much damage. Looking at Adrenaline Boost, increases move speed by 40% and damage by 20% for 5 seconds. It's actually a really nice spell, and if you're ever solo, I would probably be running this. But for anything Hellgate-wise, GVG-wise, I think Deadly Chop is just better. Battle Frenzy, increases your move speed and attack speed by 25% and makes you immune to any movement impairing effects. The only weapon I really like this with is the Great Axe for the Whirlwind. Other than that, I just don't think this has a place. Attack speed doesn't really affect axes. They're such slow weapons anyway. And the move speed, you'd probably get more out of Adrenaline Boost. Internal Bleeding. Swing your weapon around you, dealing 186 damage to all enemies in 5 meter radius. The hits cause internal bleeding, which deals 70 damage per second, while an affected enemy is moving. The bleeding lasts for 8 seconds. This is actually super good in ZVZs. You put this onto a group that's all clumped up, and they have to then run back. Running back means that they're going to get bleeded and they're going to take a lot of damage. 15-second cooldown means you can kind of do it every engage, and actually you really underestimate how much damage this does. So I would actually say for ZVZs, this is the weapon you want. This is the skill you want. For Hellgate's GVGs, Deadly Chop is probably better. Now looking at the passives, Deep Cuts. Every 4 normal attacks you inflict a bleeding on the enemy. I would actually say this is very good for axes because it kind of pairs up nicely with Riven Strike. Life Leech. Every normal attack you restore 11 health. Increased defense. Every 5 normal attacks, your resistances are increased by 85 for 2 seconds. That's 5 auto attacks. Your attack speed on this is not very quick, so don't expect to have this up very often. An Aggressive Rush. Every 4 normal attacks, all your damage gets increased by 8% for 3 seconds. I would say this or Deep Cuts is probably better. Haven't tested it myself. I would actually probably say Deep Cuts might even be better. But yeah, so you can probably use whichever you want out of the 2 damage ones. But yeah, so in terms of Battle Axe, Vampiric Strike deals 431 physical damage to an enemy. If the enemy has Riven Strike on him, you will also get healed based on the stack. So very nice solo weapon. Has the potential to 1v2, probably even 1v3 if you pair it up with something like a Mercenary Jacket, where your bleeds are going to be healing you with obviously Bloodlust up. After that, you've got Vampiric Strikes to keep you healed as well. You could probably do some work there. Really good weapon for solo, but not very good for GVGs, Hellgates, or ZVZs. Hand of Core, which is actually the Great Axe. Some weapons have weird names. Whirlwind. Spin around like a whirlwind for 5 seconds, dealing 140 fizz damage every 0.5 seconds to all enemies in 5 meter radius, while channeling your move speed is increased by 20%. I don't think this is a very good weapon, unfortunately. I love this weapon, and I really wish this was viable. If this was a strong enough ability, I would be using this no matter what. The problem is, every time that whirlwind does damage, every 0.5 seconds it hits armor. So it's not like it pierces it once and then does total damage. No, it hits it every time. So me in leather gear, just to kind of show off, I have 63% physical damage to you is mitigated. So 63% against what we've just seen on that axe as, what was it? 140. So already I'm mitigating over 70 damage every 0.5 seconds. So overall, over that whole entire time, obviously 10 ticks, I'm reducing 700 damage just by being in leather gear. A plate is going to take no damage. A clothy is going to take a lot of damage, especially if you pair this up with Deadly Chop to reduce your resistances beforehand. I would say Whirlwind could do work then. Other than that, it's a very nice solo weapon because you can kind of pair it with Adrenaline Boost. That Whirlwind and Wanderlust, you're going to just leave an area. No one is going to be able to catch you. You can outrun direwolves for a short time, I believe, still. But yeah, in terms of that, I don't think it's viable for Hellgates, GVGs, or anything like that right now. Maybe ZVZs if you wanted to run internal bleeding, but it's a very, very risky setup. The Halberd. Now, the Halberd's got some controversy around it, is that it's just, people have wanted it buffed for a long time. It has a really cool idea behind it, but it's just not really usable, unfortunately. Deals 295 damage to an enemy and any enemies in the area around them. So it's an area of effect around the target you hit. And it's not a very big one, unfortunately. It causes the target to bleed for 27 damage per second for 5 seconds. So the bleed is kind of irrelevant. It does very small amount of damage. The damage itself isn't particularly high. The main effect of this, if the bleeding effect of your Rending Strike is active on the main target, every target affected by the AoE will also have their incoming heals reduced by 23%. Additionally, the Rending Strike will spread to all targets in range. So if 5 people stood on top of each other and you have Rending Strike on one of them 3 stacks, you can spread them to everybody and every single target will have their healing reduced by 53%. The problem is, Carrion Cooler does this just better and more damage. So at the moment, I would say this is just not a viable weapon to be used, unfortunately. Looking at Carrion Cooler then, our first of the artifacts. Sends a Transient Raven in a straight line, dealing 393 physical damage to all enemies hit. Additionally, it causes the targets to bleed for 67 damage per second for 5 seconds. Over the duration of the bleed, the target's received healing is reduced by 35%. You pair this up with the fact that you're reducing the healing already by 30% with Rending Strike. Yeah, that's a 65% healing reduction, which is actually better than the Halberd. Does more damage to everybody, can actually hit more targets easily. The bleed does more damage. The only disadvantage is the cooldown slightly higher, but Carrion Cooler is just straight up better than Halberd, unfortunately. For ZVZs, actually viable because you can use the internal bleeding as well as the Morgana Raven. Everybody groups up, you hit them all with the Morgana Raven, you swing your weapon, do the internal bleeding, and you're going to bleed them for an absolute truck ton. Very, very nice combo. So yeah, definitely viable in ZVZs. In terms of GVGs and Hellgates, definitely, because you can kind of run whatever and actually be able to shut down a healer. Really, really nice with a Carrion Cooler. But I would say for GVGs, it's not really in a spot right now where it's usable. It gets punished super hard by being quite a squishy bruiser. Things like fire being so strong at the moment is going to... fire and a crossbow would shred a Carrion Cooler in seconds. And that's what they have to be really, really wary of. So I would say it's usable in GVGs, but probably not top tier at the moment. The Infernal Scithe. I have to be honest, I've never really liked the Infernal Scithe. Why? Because Bloody Reap hits twice. So, a mighty attack with your Scythe that deals 290 damage twice to enemies around you. The first hit causes the enemy to bleed for 65 damage per second for 5 seconds. So, doesn't reduce healing, and that damage gets affected by armor twice on the main hit. So, while the Carrion Cooler only gets 1 hit of 350, this one gets 2 hits reduced by 60% each, which is a huge amount of reduction. I would say the Carrion Crawler is straight up better than this in every situation. GVGs, Hellgates, and ZVZs, I would say it's better in every situation. You can also cast the Carrion Crawler from range. So I really don't like this weapon. I just don't think it's viable. Looks bloody cool though. And finally, Bear Paws. We've seen these sported by Boar as well as a couple of other people already. Boar actually had quite an interesting build with these. Let's go over the ability first. Jump towards your enemies and slash them in a large cone, dealing 656 physical damage, while also inflicting a severe bleed, dealing 30 true damage per second for 6 seconds. Now, that's really, really cool. We don't often see true damage in the game, so having true damage on this is really, really nice. 30-second cooldown, 15-second range. They're a bit clunky and a bit difficult to aim at times, but if you get them right and you start getting skilled with them, it's a huge amount of instant damage paired up with that bleed. You're going to shred through people, clothies, tanks, whatever, because it's still going to do a decent amount of damage. And actually, you can use these with the Royal Boots, and what we were seeing like Boar doing, and we've seen other people as well, he's just the name that comes to mind at the moment, is that dives in, does this razor cut, and Royal Shoes is out. Because you are very squishy. Again, you have the same problem with the Carrion Crawler. It's a two-handed, or obviously it uses both weapons, weapon slots. You're not going to be able to have a shield or anything like that. Unfortunately, that means that you are just naturally a little bit squishier, and you will get blown up quickly. Axes are very, very famous for being focused at this point, unfortunately. But yeah, so quite cool weapons. I would say Bear Paws, Carrion Crawler are the only real two viable ones or usable ones at the moment. Bear Paws look incredible, very sort of Wolverine style feel to them. They diving in and you just clawing and stabbing and swinging and things, so pretty cool. But yeah, so guys, thanks for watching, catch you later, and let me know what you think of axes.